We're going to talk about all of that with someone who has just lived that, Alison Matzik. She's the owner and physiotherapist of the Stapleford Health and Rehab Center. She has 2 clinics, one in Regina and one in Weyburn, and she's in Regina this morning. Alison, welcome to our program. I'm glad to meet you here.
Thank you for having me.
How does it feel to be back in business again?
You know, it feels really great. It's nice to see people in person again. We've been doing telehealth for the last month, and although it was a good service to give, it has its limitations for sure.
So now it's good to be back to the real thing. Okay, I need to understand the process as we get to how you adapted to get to day one yesterday. Going back to March, you had to close in March both of your clinics and you laid off your staff in Regina and Weyburn, 35 employees altogether. Do you remember thinking at that moment, would you ever reopen again?
There was never a question as to whether or not we'd reopen. It was a question of when. You know, we were hearing all sorts of things, like whether it would be weeks or months, and nobody really had any indication for how long it would be. So it was a little bit of a scary feeling to know that we had to close, but again, not knowing how long it was going to be for.
It ended up being quite a number of weeks, but as I understand it, you began to think about what reopening would look like very quickly after having to close. So tell me about the changes that you made.
Yeah, we started thinking about what was going to be required shortly after we closed the doors, and we knew that things like a plexiglass covering at the front desk to, you know, sort of separate the clients from the admin staff, face masks and other proper PPE for all the staff and the clients coming in the door, face masks, hand sanitizer, disinfectants, social distancing stickers on the floor, all those kinds of things that we knew we had to do, as well as reducing the lineups and the front line queue at the front desk. So we knew we had to make changes such as having people book with their practitioner rather than at the front desk, taking payments online, booking online, things like that, just to reduce the lineups.
So essentially paperless then?
Yeah, we really have gone completely paperless. We also had an intake form that we had people fill out when they first got to the clinic for new assessments, and we've changed that to be online and emailed to them as well.
So interesting. And then the PPE, as you mentioned, that's because obviously the very nature of your work is to be in close contact with your clients, the people who see you, and that you think is sufficient, both from the practitioner and the client. What you've done is sufficient to keep everybody safe?
Yeah, we followed the guidelines of our college, and you know, so we got everything that was required from them. It was a little tough getting some of the surgical masks, but we got lucky and got a couple places that we got our supply chain from, and so we're well stocked now for quite a while.
So in the workspace and the physical space in which you're working, you had it all set and ready to go for reopening. What about your staff? You had to lay off, as I mentioned. Did you bring them all back? Did everyone want to come back? How did the staffing situation go?
At this point, we were able to bring back about probably 75% of our staff. Some people have childcare issues, and that was their holdup to come back. Some services haven't restarted yet, such as massage therapy, and some services were just not quite back to full speed yet with our exercise therapy and our admin staff. And we brought back the people that came back all at reduced hours at this point. Kind of for 2 reasons. Number one, to reduce the number of people coming through the doors initially, just to see how things went for the first few weeks. But secondly, just to make sure that we had the people coming. We weren't sure what the climate would be for the clients and their feeling of safety and security to come in the door for treatment again.
That was exactly going to be my next question. What did you find as far as demand for the services?
It's pretty high, to be honest with you. There was no physiotherapy availability for people in the last 6 weeks in Saskatchewan, and there's lots of people that still had surgeries or had falls in February or March and have had no follow-up, and so they're behind in their rehab, and it's a big deal because it can lead to poor outcomes or delayed outcomes and reduced level of function for people. So it makes a big difference to have that service available, and our phone was ringing off the hook yesterday.
That's good news. Fingers crossed that the business continues well for you and that everyone is safe on both sides. I have a question. I guess what really strikes me as I listen to your story is how much you plan. Well, you had weeks of planning to get everything ready to go. And we have heard from people who are saying that the decision to reopen has been very hasty and that they haven't had the time to get everything in place for a successful reopening. There are parts of the country which haven't reopened, services like yours, a physiotherapy clinic. I'm wondering, and perhaps even more broadly too, what would your advice be to a business owner, somebody getting set to reopen? What are the key things to keep in mind?
I would say the biggest thing is just have that plan in place, because we had talked to a few of our staff members about a month ago saying, there's a chance we could open the beginning of May. And a few of them said back to me, oh, there's no way. And I said, well, we have to be prepared for that. And when we got the word, we had less than 10 days before that day came, which was yesterday. So I'm really glad that we had that feeling, or had that way of thinking, because it prepared us to be ready to open yesterday.
Well, we're looking at your staffers right there with the masks and ready to go. You know, we keep hearing in Ontario, for example, the Premier Doug Ford says, get ready. And your case is very much reason to get ready. There's a lot to do to change a business. Listen, Alison, we'll stay in touch because it's interesting to hear how the early hours and days are going for you. Thank you very much for the time. And as I say, all the best in the new workplace reality. Alison Matzik is the owner and a physiotherapist at the Stapleford Health and Rehab Center. She is one in Weyburn. She's in Regina this morning. And now we're looking live at Ottawa. We're waiting in about 90 minutes' time, the Prime Minister with an